This week, we are talking about data-driven marketing and how to integrate data into your marketing strategy. Just as a starting point, I'd love to get your perspective as a entrepreneur, as a startup founder. How critical is that data integration and analysis for our effective marketing?
Almost everyone, when they first start out marketing, they don't have a great idea of who their ICP is. So they almost always go too broad. And once you start even getting the simple initial data, which some of the easiest data in my mind to get is things like demographic data on who you're performing the best with. Are there certain industries that you're getting more traction with? Is there certain company sizes that you seem that it's easier for you to get deals through within those organizations? Is there certain position titles or certain functions and seniorities that your marketing dollars are more effective and less effective? Weirdly enough, I still see way too many startups who say, hey, our product is so amazing. Anyone with a computer needs this. And so they end up targeting, everyone. Come to find out, actually looking in the data, you spent $6,000, over the last 6 months targeting manufacturing companies, and no one in the manufacturing industry has ever purchased your product. So looking at the data, having the data, even in that simple aspect, could be a huge difference in marketing efficiency. And I would say that demographic data is probably the easiest. So as we continue this topic, I'm sure there's a lot of other areas of data that we'll get into, but I think that's one of the easiest ways to understand, if you're just not operating, with data in hand, then just assume that you're probably wasting a lot of your spend. But if you at least have a way to eventually analyze this data in 3 or 6 months, then that's not wasted spend, as long as you analyze it and then actually make pivots to pull up or double down on, the places where you're having the most traction, or you've never sold a single product and service and you probably need to stop advertising to that group.
Yeah, that's a good point that you're making at the end there about obviously trying to reach your entire TAM is not going to work, especially if you have a really broad, like you said, software product where anybody with a computer could benefit from it, but really figuring out who is getting the most benefit out of it, but still kind of finding that balance of testing out potential other markets or new markets that you didn't immediately come to mind when you were thinking about reaching, but ended up finding a lot of value out of your product. I feel like at the end, you were kind of talking about looking at the demographic data and then using that to decide if it's actually worth exploring those new markets or not. And I'm kind of curious too, if that's something that you have done with Impactable, where maybe you thought that there was a core ICP that we were going to reach, but then we ended up hitting on a different persona altogether.
For us, I think we took the same journey that a lot of people do take. When we first started marketing our LinkedIn ad service, it kind of was hey, anyone who has a business and is online, could probably benefit from LinkedIn ads. And so we did start off pretty broad with our marketing, and we attracted a lot of solopreneurs, coaches, consultants, advisors. We snagged, some software companies, some financial service companies. So we did start off really broad, and, that worked for us. We kind of didn't know who we had the best impact with, who we could serve the best. So that was fine. We were getting that data in, but especially with leveraging LinkedIn ads, it gives you amazing demographic data on your click-through rates, on your conversions, on the people you get leads with. So over time, that was one big data source that I was analyzing to say, okay, we're spending this money on LinkedIn ads, or even if we're just using LinkedIn ads as retargeting, what's the demographic of people that are actually becoming clients? Or even a simple way, if all of your new clients are filling out an intake form and you ask them what industry they're in and, how big their company is, you start to get an idea of okay, I've marketed to the entire world, essentially, really broad, but these are the people we seem to be attracting. And you're going to attract different people at different stages. So early on, we were really attracting smaller companies, coaches, consultants, advisors, and whatnot. And we would lean into that to some degree. So I would say for us, we started out broad. And then once we started getting the data, it started to become pretty clear that we had the best traction with 3 or 4 target audiences. We did really good with software companies. We did really good with marketing agencies, financial service companies, and IT service companies. And then, yes, we do pretty well with coaches and consultants. But as we grew, we intentionally kind of downplayed that side and really leaned into 50 plus company size, these 4 or 5 industries in the United States. And we did that with the data that we were getting that led us to believe this is where we're getting the most traction. And yeah, there's been a ton of industries where we left it open for a long time. And then after looking at the data, it's just the cost per conversion, the amount spent and the amount that we're getting back from these industries just don't make sense. So we started slowly cutting those out based on the data that we were seeing.
Yeah, I've noticed that too, where like, there are certain people that will just benefit better from our services or will end up getting, better results from running LinkedIn ads in particular. And so it's always good to have that, niche down perspective. So I wanted to lean into kind of how we've used data a little bit internally too. And maybe from a little bit of a high level or broad perspective, what are some of your, I guess, best practices for maintaining that data-driven marketing strategy?
Yeah, I guess one of the first things or best practices is, are you set up in a way that you're collecting data would be a good first step. So a lot of people, unless you're collecting it in a way that you could eventually review it, you're never going to get to that next stage where you're analyzing the data, making choices from that data and pivoting. So the first step would be, are you marketing and moving through your business in a way that you're accumulating data? So one of the things I did early on that I'm really happy I did is I set up we use Calendly still for call booking. And I set up a simple Zap with Zapier that said, anyone who books from Calendly, bring them into a Google Sheet. And I was just accumulating the data from call bookers. And in that Calendly link, they're asked a couple of questions. Usually it's like, well, where did you find us? And, what industry are you in? Things like that. I was accumulating data just based on our call bookers that were kind of self-reported from the people booking calls. And then the next piece of data was, do you have an archive of everyone who's purchased from you? And do you take the time to categorize them? I didn't do that step early enough, even up to the point where I sold most of the agency a couple of years ago. When I was in discussions with the buyer, they wanted to know what data I had. And yes, I had all my call bookings. They also wanted to know, like, who have you sold to? What's the breakdown demographically of your past clients, of your current clients? And I didn't have that as much as I should have. But that's an easy one. Like, anyone you sell to, unless you're, a $10 a month, like, SaaS company, might be a little harder to get that breakdown. But anyone you sell to, like, you should know, what industry are they in? What country are they in? What company size are they in? And try to put them in buckets so that you can start to paint a picture of who's booking calls with you, of who's purchasing from you. So that would be step one. The next one would be, I do really like to set up channel attribution as much as possible. So in LinkedIn, in Google search, in Meta, in programmatic, I try to set up the conversion so that I get insights as much as possible. And LinkedIn's a huge one. Like, I can look at LinkedIn and I can even look at my website demographic breakdown. I can look at the demographic breakdown of those who fill out leads, of those who convert. And that's really insightful to me. So I have my call bookers, I have my purchasers, I have my LinkedIn demographic data. And then I would say that it would be really nice to also set up some kind of like website visitor identification that allows you to kind of have a better idea of who you're attracting, the actual personalities, and be able to get breakdowns on that. So if you could just set things up so that even if you don't know all of these things, if you're collecting them so that you can analyze it in 3 or 6 months, that would be a great first step. And that's something that a lot of people don't start early enough. And even without a bunch of cool tech tools, it should be easy enough for you to get information on your call bookers, those who book meetings with you, and those who purchase from you. And if you can start there, that's a great place to accumulate information that eventually you can analyze and do something with.
Definitely. Yeah, I think when we're talking to like startups and entrepreneurs, the importance of that early data and how you acquired your like early clientele is so important to like facilitating more growth for your company in the future. And so we're talking a little bit about what I would consider like client acquisition data, right? Like the people who are booking calls with you and the people that you're selling to and the clients that we're reaching. And so when it comes to more of like a marketing strategy and more of like that top level marketing, I would say, what data is kind of important to have at your disposal to make sure that your marketing strategy is working for you?
And yeah, some of that data that would probably be best to have is kind of from the step before if you're collecting it. So if you haven't started yet, your call bookers, you're meeting the people that you actually meet with, your current clients. I would actually say website visitor identification of some kind if you're a US-based company or if you have US-based traffic. Collecting that information is really big. And then, if there's anything else that's kind of, so those would be the primary ones. The secondary ones would be people that are, filled out a lead gen form, maybe on Meta or LinkedIn. Like maybe they haven't actually set a meeting yet, but they've expressed some interest in an asset of yours. They're in your pipeline. Your CRM data, so those people that maybe they've just reached out or maybe they've expressed some interest in the past. There's also with LinkedIn and with more of these softwares, there's companies that have been exposed or have interacted with your ads that haven't expressed, like haven't set a meeting and aren't in your CRM yet, but they're they're on your radar as far as kind of like website visitor identification too. Like they haven't told you that they're evaluating you and that they're interested in your service, but you can see from your software that they're either on your website or they're interacting with your ads. That kind of data I think is really big. And then what I would do if you have, some kind of tool or data enhancement is I would take that data and I would try to get their like LinkedIn profiles. So if you did have the ability to take all of those different segments and kind of standardize it and say, okay, I'm going to get their LinkedIn profile data and their company data based on LinkedIn. So I have a really good idea of who these people are. If you have and control that information, then you can do whatever you want with that. You can take that data and you could then market to that specific group with email, with LinkedIn outreach, with Meta, programmatic, LinkedIn. Once you own that data and control it, then you can, have a lot more options of what you want to do with that.
Yeah, and getting into some of those options or like ways you can use that data. I know that people always we talk about this too, the importance of like personalization in your marketing efforts and, how feeling like a marketing asset is speaking to me as an individual rather than broadly to somebody who's like me, how that can be, really impactful in your marketing strategy. So how do you kind of use the data that you have at your disposal to enhance that personalization of your marketing?
It's a good question. So one of the first things I did when, like, if we go back to, what I say is some of the basic information you should have is what industries or demographic breakdowns do you have the best and worst traction with? So with that information on digital marketing, it would be then easy to create campaigns with specific messaging that speak to that industry, that industry's needs, or that specific position title within the organization and what their needs are versus, you start when you're targeting 20 or 30 plus industries and a bunch of different titles, all you can do is kind of like be broad and say, hey, we solve this problem in general. But when you actually have specific information and you say, okay, they visited my website and they're part of the marketing and advertising industry, I can create an ad campaign that speaks more directly to these founders because I know they know who we are. I know that what industry they're in. I know what challenges they have. I know when these kind of people buy from us, this is exactly what they're buying and why they're buying it. So I can speak more directly to them. On a more personal level, if you have like website visitor identification, if you have identified the actual individuals in your pipeline or your meeting bookers or your past, kind of pipeline that's maybe going a little cold, you could have much more personal outreach through email or even through LinkedIn outreach, where you could send a connection request to this person, have an introduction message. Once they connect, actually have an opening, message that tries to start the conversation, and who they are, what industry they're from, the problems they likely have, and you could speak directly to them. I also think there's a level of technographic data, so things like Built With and Wappleizer, and we have are now licensing our own data for this. But if you know exactly like what software they have installed on their website, and that can help you know what problem they're dealing with. For example, there's a lot of website developers who only work with, WordPress. If they had this technographic data and they say, okay, I know I'm speaking to a software company with 50 plus employees who uses WordPress, I can speak to them in a way that I understand what they're doing, how they're doing it, what their challenges are. And it's not just like I'm emailing all these, software companies with 50 plus people and I'm saying, if you have WordPress, I can help you. Like, I know you have WordPress and I know you have these challenges and I can help you solve this. Or I see you're using this legacy software, which has this, and this wrong with it. And everyone who's on there is migrating to this. I can help you do that. Like, that is a much more personalized message to someone and you're speaking to their exact pain because you have data that actually tells you what's going on. So I think that's a really powerful thing in those cases.
Yeah, it's really powerful. I agree to kind of have that information about what tools your prospects are using and how that might inform the pain points that they have or the solutions that you can offer them. Because I know, like, if I got an outreach from someone, instead of saying like, hey, I see you work at Impactable, like, let me give you my prospect list to help you find people that fit your ICP. Like if it was like, I see that you use this particular tool, you know, I've used that tool in the past and I had this problem. If you're facing this problem, we have a solution for you. Like that feels very targeted and personal and feels like somebody who are not only like great at providing a solution, but also really good at identifying a problem, even if I myself don't know that I have that problem, which I think is a key value point that a lot of like software companies especially tend to lean into.
Yeah, because you'd already be positioning yourself as an expert if you're saying, hey, because I know that you are using this and this software, which first is like, okay, that's kind of impressive that you know what I'm using, because how did you find that out? And because I know you're using that, I know you're struggling with this, or this. And then I'm saying, okay, I am using those tools and I am struggling with two of those. So whatever you're going to say next, like, yeah, I'm all ears because you're about to speak to a problem that I am actually having. And you're already showing like expertise by even be able to identify that. So using that kind of technographic the right way, yeah, can be super powerful.
Yeah, it's almost creepy in a way, right? Like, how do you know what I'm using?
Jasmine, I noticed that you have a new chair in the corner, and I was wondering if you needed. I seen you haven't washed that in a couple of weeks. Wondering if you need some help with that. That would be
that would be crazy though if there was like a chair cleaning service that reached out to me because they saw me on videos.
Yeah, creepy AI.
Yeah. Well, while we're leaning into kind of, I guess, more advanced technologies in data-driven marketing or in data tools, I know that one of the hot topics we've been talking about lately is AI-driven data tools. So, you know, tools that will use AI to pull data for you so you don't have as much of that manual process. So how has the introduction of these kind of AI-driven data tools impacted like the B2B marketing space or how we're able to kind of reach our prospects?
In Impactable, we haven't done a ton of AI data tools that are kind of driving our marketing, but there's definitely some ways that I'm seeing this or using it kind of in an AI plus manual effort that I think eventually will be more useful. There's a couple of ones that for things like when I say, you know, in step one, analyze your demographic data. Well, that is a pretty manual effort as far as, you know, you have to, like, let's say you actually did have all the data on all of the clients that had purchased from you, and you did have their industries listed and they had their company sizes. Well, it would still be a massively like manual effort to actually look through those and then try to categorize, you know, okay, I have this many in this industry and this many in this industry and blah, blah, blah. But using AI, like even ChatGPT 4 now has this analysis kind of mode where you can upload a CSV or an Excel of data and you can actually ask a question. You can say, hey, ChatGPT, I've just uploaded my current or past client list or all my call bookers from the last 6 months. Please run an analysis on this. And I want to know, you know, what are the main industries that I am attracting the most and what are either the type of people or the type of companies. Like you could actually ask it certain questions, and then what it would do is the time consuming task of saying, okay, you have 375 records and of those 15 are this industry and 37 are this industry, and it could actually break that down for you into something that might actually be insightful. So looking at the data that you have, because collecting the data is step one, AI is not going to help with that. Analyzing the data, AI can help with that, and surfacing insights. And then the next thing would be personalization at scale. So if I did have, like, say, either all my call bookers or all my current clients, or even if I just had a list of prospects and I had their LinkedIn URL, you can actually then employ AI and AI tools to say, hey, I want to send a message to everyone on this list and I want to personalize it based on something from their experience in LinkedIn, visit their profile, process their LinkedIn profile, grab something specific that will help me personalize the first line of this, and then input their first name, this personal kind of opener, and then the message that I have and send it to them. So it could do personalization at scale. It could also do something, you know, kind of like what we're talking about with digital marketing, where it could say, hey, you know, I want to send this message to all these people. They're from 5 different industries. If they're from this industry, send them this message. If it's from this industry, send them this message. And AI can actually then kind of sort that for you and say, okay, I'm going to send this message. I can see what industry they're from. I'm going to select this message and tailor it to them. So personalization at scale and data processing at scale I think are two major things that AI tools can help with. There are more coming, especially I've seen some really slick software where they're doing it in real time, where you visit their website and they're able to identify what company you're from, look up your company information, and display some kind of like personalized message on the website in almost real time that speaks to you, or like push you to a version of that landing page that's more catered towards you because it identified what company you're from, what type of company, and actually, they have multiple landing pages based on those. It could actually push you to that. So I am seeing like, that's probably in the future for like majority of people. Really big companies who have that kind of money are probably seeing that. Like I think I saw it on Clearbit. Like it was really impressive what they were doing, and it was like they even showed my logo, like the Impactable logo, on their page that I was on, and it was like in real time. Like I don't know how that one was actually really impressive. But so that's some of the stuff that I think you'll be able to see and do.
Yeah, that is really interesting too, that they were able to kind of pull out the logo of the company that you work at and put that in real time on their website.
Yeah, it's getting a little scary, but a little exciting. Yeah, it's going to be a fine line. And I've also I guess the other thing I've seen is you go to someone's website and they have website visitor identification, AI, an AI flow then does another series of queries where they find out where you're working, the contact information. They can even find your address. And then you'll get a postcard in the mail from this company that you visited website. So from website visit to the direct mail in your mailbox, like it's connected now in some places. And I've seen that like 3 or 4 times now.
Wow. It's almost like that conversation of like, when does marketing become creepy? Like when does it cross the line of being, wow, that's cool that they have that information, and oh God, how did they get that information?
Yeah, because if they can do website visit to direct mail, like it wouldn't have been that much of a stretch to like say they have a company, like someone physically knocks on your door, like, so I noticed you visited our website. No, get out of my yard.
Yeah, I think that's going to be an important balance too, especially like knowing in the future as we get access to more data about the people that are visiting us, the people that are showing interest, like where is kind of that ethical line that we should sit on where we're not, making people creeped out by our brand.
Yeah. When you start sending my kids birthday presents because I visited your website last month and cards, then we got problems.
Definitely. Don't bring the kids into it. Well, just to finish up this conversation here, wrap things up, I wanted to lean a little bit more into like the future of data-driven marketing. So obviously we've already touched on that a little bit with the potential of AI for a lot of this kind of data analysis and, applying data in more real world instances. And so outside of those topics there, what other trends do you anticipate happening in data-driven marketing, and how should marketers prepare to adapt to these changes?
I do think one big thing is the privacy that keeps becoming kind of more and more of a concern, the cookieless world, the tracking getting degraded, attribution becoming muddy. I do think one big thing in the future, and the not so distant future, is just the need for companies to own more of their own first-party data. So instead of relying on, Meta or LinkedIn or Google to kind of track this stuff with cookies and give you information, companies will need to find more ways to gather information outside of the platforms and own that information. So I do think website identification in the United States, to some degree, I think privacy will continue to crack down on that, but I don't think we're going to get to the point like the EU where it's like completely forbidden. And I think they're going to find smart ways where you can I can have your information but not have access to it, but I can use it for marketing purposes. So for example, I can remarket to you without knowing, your cell phone number and address and being too intrusive. Like it's uncovered but stored and coded, and I can retarget you, but I can't just have access to that. So I think to some degree, like that's going to exist, but it's going to be individual organizations that need to own that data more, figure out those solutions, because the individual channels are going to be less and less able to give you overall information about your website traffic, especially like data that can transfer over from one platform to another. So for example, like LinkedIn took good steps that I think a lot of other platforms will, where they can say, hey, you clicked on this ad, whether you made it to the website or not and got cookied or not, it doesn't matter. Because you clicked on it, we know who clicked on it and we'll let you retarget them, but we won't tell you who it was. Like, we're not going to give you the information, but we'll allow you to do what you need to do. But that doesn't help me retarget them on Meta, because if they never did make it to my website, if they never got cookied, Link knowing who it is doesn't help Meta advertise to them. So you will have to look for better ways to get that first party data, identify your website visitors, identify people in your pipeline, and own that data, because then you can take that data and you can advertise or reach out to them across all the channels versus being limited. I do think the privacy laws and the push are going to make these channels feel segmented again, which could really impact like overall marketing efficiency. But if you own the data and you're growing and enhancing your owned data, then you'll have all these opportunities for omni-channel, multi-channel, and all this different outreach. So I think that'll be a pretty big thing for the future.
Mm-hmm. And that gets into a great point too, more generally about the importance of like being able to control your marketing efforts and your marketing channels, and not giving all of the, all of the control over your marketing to the channels that you're on. I think we've talked about this in the past about how, you don't want to rely on Instagram or on LinkedIn to be like your sole online presence or your sole way of reaching your audiences, because then if something happens with, let's say LinkedIn Campaign Manager has a massive glitch and it's down for a month, then, your marketing just stops for a month because you don't have access to that data, or because you don't have those like retargeting audiences for yourself. Like, the importance of being able to own that data is so crucial for not needing to rely on these channels.
Yeah. Or you'd have to restart completely. If LinkedIn decided to take your account and never give it back, like they did with me with Lincoln Learn, our original company, then yeah, if you don't own that data, you'd have to start from scratch. You'd have to start marketing from scratch to a cold audience and building up. But if you own your warm audience, then even if they took the platform away or they took that account away, yeah, you could create another account, import your audience, and be back to business as usual in almost no time. But that's a really big risk for a lot of companies right now.
Yeah, definitely.